Augusto, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Listen, this is probably the one podcast I'm most looking forward to, not only because I think you've become actually a good friend of mine and someone I'll have in my life, hopefully, for the future. And you embody so much of what I think travel is. You're so authentic with your brand. I think you just selflessly do good for the world. I think a lot of people nowadays somewhat virtue signal. You are just an authentic human, and I think what you do with your brand, Global Child TV, is just something that inspires me. I've always wanted to kind of build a life where I could travel the world and see different cultures and impact people in a positive way, and you're doing that.
Well, thank you so much. The feeling is mutual, of course. You're great on camera, off camera. You're excellent. You've built a wonderful company, so I'm honored to be with you today.
And I don't have any plan for this. This is the first time we don't have a set of questions. We're just going to go with the flow. I think because we've had so many conversations before, I think it'll flow nicer that way. I think just for people listening and watching and viewing today, it's a bit different of the normal podcast because we usually speak to hotel managers. And I am a hotelier at heart, so I do enjoy this. But this is more broadly speaking a travel episode and listening to you about a businessman who's built a brand and has had impact. So start where you wish. Maybe a little bit about your journey and then moving more into like Global Child TV as a brand and yourself as a brand.
Sure. No, first of all, I think hotels are a key part of travel, no matter what you do. And for us, I've discovered that where you stay is paramount to the experience that you end up having. Now, I'm in television, obviously, Global Child means that no matter your race, your religion, your background, you're part of the family of humanity. So you are a global child, right? And we built this brand as we began to travel the world. And I started 7 years ago with the selfie stick and no funding. I had been a TV host for NBC, so I had experience in television. And I saw production, and I saw a lot of the redundancies that happen in television. And I think you have identified some of these in your own company in the hotel industry. And then I realized that, people want to hear a story, but they also want impact. I felt frustrated seeing all these influencers traveling to all these amazing places and giving nothing of value. And I'm not hating on them, but it just made me feel empty. And I said, how can I travel to these places, have great experiences, but also have a positive impact? And that's what we do. We travel and we have purpose, and we share the world with wonderful people.
And don't be humble for a minute. Please just hit people with the stats, with the figures, with the viewership, with the amount of countries you're in and channels, please. Just so people have context, right?
All right, yeah. All right, so currently this is the fourth season. We've done 31 episodes around the world. We've reached roughly 1 billion passengers and viewers around the world across 7 years. Our partners are people like Dubai Tourism, American Airlines, Emirates Airlines, Peacock, which is NBC. They also have a partnership with Sky. And now we're in discussions for distribution in the Middle East. So it's been great to see it grow. And interestingly enough, when you begin a show or a brand, you think you know which way it's going to go. But what happened for us was that when we began to give back, that's really what brought the celebrities that join us on the journeys. The press wanted to cover it. And it was really in trying to bring value to people, places, and causes that we grew.
There's so much I want to dive into. You as an entrepreneur, how you create a brand from scratch, like you said, from a selfie stick. But I'd like to position it at the start. Travel for me has been, I grew up on a farm in Ireland, small town, the nearest town was about 20 minutes drive away, right? So it was just beautiful greenery, animals, it was beautiful. I loved my childhood. But in Ireland and where I lived, it was vital that if I wanted to achieve something bigger and to see the world, I had to travel.
Yes.
And travel for me has literally changed my perspective on life by an order of magnitude. So for you and for the brand that you position to the world, how has, in your experience, travel just changed your perspective from maybe where you grew up or to who you are now as a person? Because I think that is what people, if you haven't traveled before, it changes everything.
It really does. So our slogan is travel and purpose. I really believe that when you combine both, it's almost like an exponential result. And for me, I was born in Miami. I grew up in Mexico City, family from Spain, a little Irish in there, one of my great-grandparents. And when people used to ask me, where are you from? I used to say, I'm a global child. I just didn't want to give the whole explanation. And I think we live in an interconnected world where we are all becoming global children. It's very strange to find a person who is just specifically from one place, who just grew up there and the parents are from there. you might be
I am one.
that person, right? And by the way, I love Ireland. It was one of my favorite destinations. The Cliffs of Moher, to my liking, is one of the most beautiful places on the planet.
We'll do an overshot of the Cliffs of Moher right now on YouTube. It is amazing.
Yeah, Cliffs of Moher is wonderful. Yes, and Irish people, interestingly enough, and I'll tie this back into what you're asking. Everywhere we go, I discovered a positive life lesson. So travel teaches you things. If you become cognizant of the lesson that you're meant to learn, it becomes more effective. Example, somebody goes through a breakup, what do people do, right? We have to sit there and think, what did I learn? What could I have done better? The same in business. So travel is the same. Sometimes I feel we travel and we don't take time to digest what the place is teaching us. So for me, I began to discover very specific life lessons that I would then apply through the voiceover and the narrative. In Ireland specifically, it's called the craft of curiosity. And we discovered how being curious is one of the very best ways to advance your life. And Irish people like they're famous for being friendly. Yeah. And I kept asking okay, so at the beginning, it was off-putting because people would just ask you questions. You go to Ireland and they're like, why are you here? Like, where are you from? And I was like, why are they asking me so many questions? And I discovered that they're curious, but that's why they're friendly. If you're not curious about people, you'll never develop a friendship, right? So then we put this into the episode, and every place we've been, just, for example, in Greece, it was generosity. I noticed the generosity of the people. In Tanzania, it was how do you conquer challenges? And it's just everywhere, you learn lessons. Yeah. I think you don't have to leave your country to learn a lesson, but I do think you need to be aware that you're trying to learn something.
I love that. Yeah, Ireland is known for its hospitality. It's just what we are as people, and we are very curious. So you've absolutely nailed that. But I think that's it. Like, people are interested in other people, and when you show interest in another person, it makes you feel heard to some extent. I think it's Irish people can network so well. There's this stat. There's 5 million people who live in Ireland, but there's 80 million people globally who could have an Irish passport. Yes, because we've traveled the world. That's why there's an Irish pub in every city, you might notice.
And I really think that travel in general, it just opens the door to new experiences. But in order to travel well, you need to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. And I think even within the world of travel, people sometimes make the mistake of sticking to what they know or sticking what is comfortable to them. So what do? They go to a beautiful beach, they have some nice drinks, a couple of restaurants. I saw the place, took some selfies, did some photos, but that's not really the fullness of a travel experience. Yeah. That's part of it. But getting out of your comfort zone, and it begins with activities. I discovered during my travels that when I used to travel prior to the show, I wouldn't book experiences. So what do? You go see tourism highlights. So example, you're in Paris, what do? You go see the Eiffel Tower. And every place has their sites. Yeah. But a site and an experience are two different things. And I began to think from a television standpoint, well, for the viewer, it's so much fun when I'm doing stuff, but what is there to do? So I used to Google it or find different websites that would show me activities and experiences. And when I began to do these things, it's just things that you're not gonna do without somebody guiding you. You're not going to go to this one random mountain and go 3 hours, and because it's a level of risk that most people will not take. But if somebody's taking you on a guided experience and you know you're going to be safe, then you do it. Yeah. And so now, whenever I travel to places, I really make it a point to see what experiences does the place offer.
And it's like travel versus tourist, right? Traveler versus tourist. Tourists may stay in the local area at the beach and the resort and not really leave and put up the photos and say they've traveled there, but have they really traveled to that country?
Yeah, and did you speak to someone there?
Yeah.
As well. I think it's being intentional. Even sometimes these tour guides. Yeah. The tour guides, they can be the driver and the person who's just doing their job, or you can apply the lesson that I learned in Ireland, which is curiosity. And hey, why do you do this? How long have you been doing it? And in that, wanting to take it a level deeper, they also share a level of friendship, and you really discover the culture.
Irish and British people historically have been known to go to the same place in the same resort year after year, nearly the same week, and you see the same families there. So I don't really describe that as travel. But if we kind of take it back a step now, and I think people listening and watching might be slightly different on this episode, let's just talk about brand, right? You started with a selfie stick, and you had a bit of experience prior, but you're now known globally as the #1 travel show, Global Child TV, and yourself. So talk to me about maybe, let's do the top 3 things that you think worked for you, how you created a brand with so many followers.
I think you need to always understand what drives you. Because if you're passionate about something, then you'll be willing to go through the storm. Every entrepreneur is going to go through storms, and you cannot just go into it for the money. If it's money, money's not, at least for me, it's not enough of a motivator to just dedicate my entire life to something. And when I began to create this travel show, I really wanted to go see the world. Much like you, I lived between Miami, LA, and Mexico City. And that was pretty much my triangle. And when you're trying to make it in entertainment, you feel that when you travel, you're missing out on opportunities. There's always a casting, or you're going to miss out on a movie. But after 5 or 6 years of chasing my career, I realized, hey, time is the one asset that we don't get back. And there comes a point in your life where there has to be that balance of, why am I working so hard? Like, I'm working hard, but for a purpose. What is that purpose? To enjoy, to grow, maybe to build a family, to have an impact on the world. That's individual to each one of us. And so for me, when I began to travel, I knew that I wanted to share something that brought value to people. So no matter what industry you're in, if you don't bring value to people, your consumers, the brands that work with you, you're not going to succeed. And a lot of people enter into things trying to find out, how can I make money from this? Or how can I extract value? Instead of that, I recommend find ways to bring value, and the funding will come. The second part of it would be to stay true to your vision. I remember when I started season 1, I was with a selfie stick and traveling, and I had to edit everything. And I made these shorter videos, and I would get feedback from industry experts that would tell me, hey, this is good, you're on the right path, but you need to do this and this better. And it was very humbling, but I applied their wisdom and we grew. And at some point, I remember a couple people said to me, we really love you, traveling with a selfie stick. Like that should be the show. It's very organic, it's very raw, and we like it. But I knew that's not where we're staying. And sometimes people want to put you in a specific box. I wanted to create something of scope, something grand, something beautiful. And of course, I wanted something high budget, impactful. I wanted to bring celebrities. I had a specific vision. And so I was intentional on taking the steps to get me to that place. So when the show grew, as soon as it started making a little bit of money, I took that and reinvested it. And I still remember the moment where we signed our first contracts, and it was just a little bit of funding. And I had the choice to set some of this aside because I had worked so hard to make that first small little pile of money, or did I believe that we could continue to grow? And so I grabbed that and invested it into the company, and then we took major steps. And that's always been just a mindset of growth and impact. And the last one is just enjoy it. I used to sit there and watch other television travel shows, and when you're on the creative side, you can choose, what do I say, what shot do I put in, what experience. And from a creative standpoint, I would see some programs, and I remember thinking, do I put dates and places? Like, imagine like if you're in school, like in 1949, Captain Jack freed the. I'm like, I don't care. Yeah. Like I really don't care. People can go to school for that, and when there's historical information that's impactful and important, I'll put it in there. But I said, this is entertainment at the end of the day. I want people to be moved emotionally, to laugh, to cry, to be inspired, to enjoy. And so you just have to be true to your voice. The more true you are to your voice, nobody can replicate it.
I love that. So it's bring value to the audience, enjoy it as the last one, and then stay true to your vision.
Yes.
So I think, like, if I was to like summarize the last two, for me, why I think that's important: 1, enjoying it, and 2, staying true to your vision. Because 1, if you change your vision based on other people's opinions, it will have less of an emotional connection to you in order to withstand the amount of years you need to put the work in for it to compound to one day be successful. Because what people see is they see someone who's been successful, and they don't realize that there's been 10, 12, 15 years
no
before,
shortcuts,
right?
Yeah.
If you don't enjoy the process, I say it to everyone, it's impossible for you to stay true to it, because you just won't. If you're not enjoying 10 years of hard graft, you'll never get there. So I think that perseverance, which you probably humbly didn't say, but you put the years in, you put the work in. But if you didn't stay true to your vision, you changed course, you wouldn't have enjoyed it as much.
It's true.
I
heard a quote yesterday, which really rang true. It says, there's no elevator to success. You have to take the stairs.
Yeah.
And it's very true. There's no shortcuts. I think sometimes in the age of social media, people will, whatever you see, you hear these stories. But what's the point of building an audience if you have nothing to say? Yeah. And I have a lot of friends of mine also in entertainment. When you work in a specific industry, you end up networking in that industry. And I've always been intentional on, what are you doing with your platform? Is how do you define success? For me, if you don't have a purpose, if you're not having a positive impact, then it's not success. If we're just going purely by money, then some like weapons dealer that's helping to destroy the planet is successful, and that is the opposite of success.
Yeah.
Yet, if you have resources and you use a portion of that to have a positive impact. And I think for me, I'm a big faith guy. Yeah. So I do believe that there's a divine, there's God, and God opens up doors for you. But the way to go up is to go down and serve. So if you're not serving where you are, you're not going to grow. So that goes back to bringing value. Adding value and service, they're interchangeable. Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest keys that I learned in my life, to find ways to make the world a better place.
I absolutely love that. And I think I'm in an industry where it's technology startups and you have investors, and they look at you and they might look at your product and they look at like, what's the competitive landscape? I often think, and the day I start investing, I'll be like, I need to know that person's why. Like, why are they not going to give up for the next 10 years? Like, my vision one day is to compete with Booking.com and Expedia. Mm-hmm. But what people might not see is I'm aware there's 10 years of hard work to even get to a place where I could even think about competing with them. Mm-hmm. And I'm very aware that I have to do 10 years of grunt work. So if I was speaking to an investor, I would say, well, the competitive edge there is, I don't think there's many other people who are willing to put 10 years of work to get to even that position where they could start. Mm-hmm. There's your competitive edge. So I think, like, for me, if I was asking you, what's your like why behind it? Because I think that is, and listen, Simon Sinek, everyone's probably seen the video.
Sure.
It's not to bring that up, but it's like, what is it that drives you to stay going?
I think purpose. I really genuinely believe that every single human being was born with a specific purpose. Now, the disconnect happens because we think as humans mostly that we have to choose our purpose. I believe we have to discover it.
Okay.
So people are born with intrinsic talents, right? So like, you're a boxer. I see you training. You enjoy this. Since you were a child, you love sports. I have the ability to speak. Clearly, I talk a lot. But since I was little, I would talk a lot. And so people are born with specific talent. And so I think sometimes when you look at nature and creation around you, it has a lot of wisdom that we could, take a page from. So we are the only species on the planet that actually does not know its purpose and just goes to do things that are outside of the design. Example, you're never going to see an eagle trying to swim. You're not going to see a dolphin like trying to run like a cheetah. Like they do what they do. And yet sometimes we are born into specific places where we have a natural talent or ability to do X, Y, or Z. And because our conditioning or because of our parents or because of fears, we think, oh, I'm going to go do this because this will give me safety and money, and I guess, or it'll please the people around me. So I would always recommend to the people, find out what you were meant to do. Now, what you're meant to do can take a variety of forms. So my job is to communicate, inspire, and help people on their path. That can happen as a television host for NBC. It can happen as an executive producer or director with Global Child. It can happen as an author, but that purpose is always there. So when you discover your purpose, you never run out of motivation, because an eagle doesn't need motivation to keep flying, If it stops, it dies. So I think it's an oversimplification, but purpose. Purpose is what drives me.
I have like 2 points on that, right? One is playing devil's advocate.
Sure.
And the other is agreeing with it to some extent. So devil's advocate is, do you think you can get into a position in life where you're enjoying something, you're being successful, you're feeling fulfilled every day, and you're looking for confirmation bias and saying, oh, that's my purpose now? Because I've kind of self-imposed it to myself that that's my purpose.
100%. And that happened to me when my story in a nutshell is I was one of the top club promoters in Miami. Your average guy, just, chasing too many girls at a time.
So if anyone wants to get into 11, you can still get them in?
I probably can. I'm slowly losing my influence there, but yes. And then in time, I started to ask the deep questions. And I think we have to ask the deep questions. Why am I on this planet? Who gave me life, or what gave me life? Where am I going afterwards? What am I doing with this time? Because we all are leaving this planet and we don't like to think about it. Time is so short and life is so fast. And yet we see that the human experience can take literally an endless amount of formats. And yet I look at the people that seem to be the most fulfilled, the most impactful, the people that seem to have lived well. And what I find in the commonalities is that they found their purpose, they gave back, they had some kind of spirituality. I feel that for me, I would never choose to impose that on people. And I believe that God is love and God loves us, which means he gives us freedom, right? Freedom to choose. So whoever speaks to you about spirituality, whenever they want to impose their mindset, it's already off course. Now, for me, I started to ask the questions, and as I sought out the divine, I really found that God was real, and I began to also ask for that direction. So I used to pray, I'm like, okay, God, I don't know what to do with my life. I'm good at this and this and this. They offer me this and this, but I need you to show me the path. And for me, the path has been very clearly shown. And along those steps, I thought that I had arrived at my purpose. And like you say, I was mistaken. Like, I first started writing a magazine. I created a magazine, so I'm a writer, I'm a communicator. I'm like, this is what I was born to do. And then a year and a half later, I'm like, oh, no, it's bigger than that. And then I was a TV host. I'm like, this is what I was born to do. And then I started getting bored with the interviews. I'm like, there has to be more impact. And then the show began. And then the show began to grow. So I think purpose is not a destination, it's a journey. You know, and the deeper and the more committed you are to that journey, the longer you will go and the more impact you'll have.
Yeah. See, I love that. And again, I come back to it because I'm quite a logical thinker. And my girlfriend's very spiritual, and she's kind of bringing a little bit more of that to my life, which I think will impact me massively. But what I see there is that, like, what I always say, and I have a few friends who've done very well very early in life when it comes to like wealth, right? Just financially free. But now what's happening is they've done quite a lot of fun things, which you think is the destination, and which you dream to do. And you get there at an early age, and you wake up on a Tuesday, still a little bit hungover from your weekend, and you've no fulfillment, purpose that day, right? For me, I've always found, like, do the hard things because it brings fulfillment to your life. Like, that is actually what keeps you going every day. And I think it's Jim Carrey kind of said it. It's not that it's like this is for you or what's for you won't pass you, but just accept that maybe that is right now what is for you, because it's just kind of controlling your mind every day to get over the doubts and the anxiety. And that's what happens with people when they're not fulfilled every day and they have nothing hard to achieve. So like you've said that over each stage, you've thought that was your purpose, that was your purpose, that was your purpose. Do you think in 2-3 years when Global Child TV hits a ceiling that you thought was the destination and you're there, that you might receive another hit to your mind and say, I have a new purpose?
Like, I think I already have it.
Okay.
And that's what we were mentioning about this ecosystem, about bringing nonprofits together to impact the world positively, building a global community. But the purpose evolves, it doesn't change.
Okay.
I know that's very abstract, and I hope,
No, I'm following.
From a practical standpoint, imagine you're a storyteller. What do? You begin telling stories, short stories. Maybe you do then a book, then novels, then maybe you make a movie. But at the end of the day, you're a storyteller. I think a doctor heals. Physicians heal in different ways, and entrepreneurs can build different businesses. Actually, most people don't know this, but in the Bible, there's the gift of entrepreneurship. It means that God grabs certain people and gives them the ability to create wealth. Now, the challenge for that entrepreneur is that the reason they were given the gift to create wealth is to share it, to build jobs for people, to fund charities and nonprofits and be a conduit of this wealth to reach the right people and the places. And of course, for them as well. But I've seen this often that, like, if you get a specific gift, there is a counterbalance that becomes your temptation. So what's the biggest gift for somebody who is an entrepreneur who's designed to give away some of their wealth? Greed. So the entrepreneur usually has to fight with greed, right? So I'm an encourager. And for me, it's like, what am I using my encouragement skills for? Back in my party days, it was just to get people to take off their clothes and rock out and have fun. And now it's like to find their purpose. Same gift, different application. So I think, one advice that I would give people is, as they go on in their career, human beings we're not physical beings that have a soul. We are souls that are having a human experience. And you cannot separate your physical body and your career from your spiritual well-being. Because most of the things that matter to us, love is spiritual, like hate is spiritual, like hope, joy, all these things, you don't see them. They're energy, so the spiritual world is very real. And if we want to go to a very practical, quantum physics level of things, well, you don't see the Wi-Fi around you, you don't see gravity, you don't see all these incredible forces that clearly are having an impact on your life. So to simply ignore them because you don't see them, I believe it to be foolish. So we also have to work on developing ourselves as part of our career success.
Yeah, and I think that people listening in will probably be aware we're kind of diving into purpose, which is actually like what you say about your whole brand, really, ultimately. But for me, what I've always, and I have strong beliefs, but they're loosely held. So if I hear another person's perspective and I respect them, I'm like, okay, wow, I didn't see it from that perspective. Here's what I would 100% call bullshit on, which I hear quite a lot. That money isn't important or it doesn't do X, Y, Z for you. Without a doubt, when I was living in London and I was starting the company and I borrowed rent of one of my very close friends,
Yes.
I had financial anxiety as well as the stress of building a business, as well as the stress of life.
Yes.
Now I'm in a position where I don't necessarily have the worry over can I afford rent. No one can tell me that that hasn't positively impacted my life.
Of course.
And I think hindsight is this superpower we all talk about. And you're right, like you get to a certain point of life with wealth, it is not the destination. But I think I would like to call bullshit on the fact that like money isn't important. Like, of course it is.
Of course it
we
is.
live in a capitalist world where if you want to travel, you need money to exchange for travel. If you want to stay in a nice hotel, you need money to stay there. If you want to get on a plane, you need money. So it's one of those things where I would call bullshit on it. But I think your point of it's not about the destination, it's about the journey is truly important. So I think on that point of money, and I know it's not why you started, but anyone listening in has heard your 3 kind of pillars for building a brand. How did you then go and monetize that while staying true to the brand values?
True. And thank you for sharing that. You know, you're a very wise man yourself. You know, that's why I enjoy this conversation, this on camera and off camera. Yeah. Of course, money is very important. I never said it doesn't matter.
I wasn't saying you, just general people speaking.
People who say that. No. And for anyone who's, you know, it's funny. The only people who say that are the people that never lacked it.
This is where like people become philanthropists when they've made money. There's an element of guilt in their mind that they've made money, that they their next stage of purpose, because they've done all of the things in business is, oh, I need to give it away now. Like this is why like one of my heroes, Chuck Feeney, who started the Atlantic Philanthropic Trust, he started the Giving While Living pledge. So, and his point is people said, you're so selfless, you give away all this money. He goes, why would I want to be dead and give away my money and never see the impact it has? I'm actually the most selfish man alive because I love building this hospital and seeing all the kids that I'm able to help. So he actually started the Giving While Living pledge, which Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and everyone got involved in. But he did become a philanthropist post making money and post having a house in Saint-Tropez and Marbella and Monaco. Like he did all of it and then he gave it away. So I think, you know, that is a thing to say. People don't.
For me, I think you have to do I do it mathematically. So when I had $10, I knew I had to give away 1. When it was 100, 10, and then it's no longer a debate. And the way I do that, first of all, it's biblical. It's called the tithe, and you can give it to causes and things. But what's very powerful about giving away money is that it doesn't master you. And at the same time, you no longer have to debate how much am I going to give away. You become a conduit of wealth. You become a generous person. And one time I sat down with this very famous Hollywood individual that I won't name. And they had just signed a really big multi-million-dollar contract. And you know, he said, you know, I just made FU money. And he did. I said, that's great for you. And I hesitated whether I should say what I told him, but I said, listen, I feel in my spirit I'm supposed to tell this to you. I said, have you ever played a video game and you get the cheat code? It's really fun for the first 5 minutes. And then you turn off the game. Life sometimes, when people think it's just about wealth and buying things, you get that cheat code and then you get bored. Hence depression and the drugs and the reason is that money is not purpose. Now, if you grab that, I said to him, you know what the difference is between an a-hole that everybody hates and a philanthropist that everybody loves? He's like, what? He said 5%, 10%. You grab some of this wealth that you have and you go build a school and you do this and it's proportional to whoever you are. And life will smile at you. There's spiritual laws, just like the laws of thermodynamics, right, that surround us. The generous, you know, it says the world of the generous gets larger and larger. And it does. You know, the more you give, the more you get. And it's true. And it's not only from a financial perspective or networking. It's just common sense. You know, you begin to have friends all over the world. So I think going back to
monetizing the brand.
To monetizing the brand, I will just say I identified the clients and the people who had the budget to pay me. I think that's important. And I knew that the product wasn't where it needed to be for them to pay me. Why? Because they didn't. And I would try and I would try. And a friend of mine once told me, he said, do not go cheap on your marketing materials. I was strapped for cash and I was making the PowerPoint presentations myself, and I'm not a graphic designer. And then that always stuck with me because your marketing materials really represent who you are. And so it was just a lot of lessons like that where once it grew to a certain place, I knew who the people in my industry were that had the budgets. And it was being intentional. Where are these people? Where? They're on LinkedIn, they're at the tourism conventions, and then I began to go, one by one and seeking them out. It's difficult to get meetings, but it's funny how when you smile, you have good energy and you track people down and you they see you event after event, and eventually people will respect you. They might not do business with you, but they begin to respect you. And in time, that respect actually does generate leads, which generates business.
And was there any brand values that, you mentioned the pillars, but is there any brand values around purpose that when you went to market to speak to people who could ultimately fund future seasons, that they had to hit these certain things in order, even if the paycheck was massive?
I think one of the keys was that we didn't compromise the brand. And I think one of the temptations on your way up is that sometimes you're so desperate for money and for funding that you're willing to do almost anything to be able to get that. And so for us, it was turning down sponsorship from, let's say, some brands, imagine like, let's say, beers or cigarettes or things like this, where I knew that for Global Child and the purpose that we had, I couldn't compromise. And it might have been a quick fix for 10, 15, 20 grand, but it would have damaged our reputation and the brand vision. So keeping that brand integrity, I saw a masterclass by Bob Iger. He's a CEO of Disney. And he again, and he always says, do not compromise your brand. And that always stuck with me as well. And so even now, when we have potential partnerships, I think if I had unlimited wealth and funding wasn't an issue, would I work with this? And then I know your answer. And then I know the answer. Yeah.
Interesting. There's a point I want to slightly go back on. I think my belief is this is impossible. So I would love to hear if you think it is possible. You said, and as example, you were in Miami, you were club promoting, you're probably at all the parties, and you probably woke up one day and you said, this isn't who I want to be or what I want to do. And you changed. I fundamentally believe you learn from your mistakes and your experiences. And I love old people. I love sitting down and talking to them. My grandmother's 95, I think. The greatest moment in her life was when they got electricity. If I'm ever stressed about something, I just think back to that question. I'm like, wow, perspective. But here's my belief that's impossible. Hindsight is impossible to have foresight with. I just don't think you can do it without learning from your mistakes. So let's take an example of, I probably as a young testosterone-driven male was like, oh, the yacht parties would be so cool to eventually get to, because if you're into capitalism and entrepreneurship, there is an element of success and nice things you want to achieve one day. And I've done, Monaco Grand Prix and Miami and lots of stuff here in Dubai. If someone invited me this Saturday to another party, I'd be like, no. Now, if you asked me 5 years ago when I couldn't afford rent in London, I had to move back to the farm in Ireland, would I ever say no to that? I would have said, you're mad. I would never, ever turn that down. And I think it's the same when you get to a certain level of wealth, you realize, wow, that's not it. That's not what I was chasing. But my belief is it's impossible to figure that out before you get there. Now, I think travel and the experiences you work with kids in disadvantaged areas of the world, farmers who've been hit by floods, whatever it may be, and you actually see it in front of you. Do you think travel is one thing that could bring perspective on life before you have to learn from your own experiences? I fundamentally think it's impossible.
Yeah, you can't learn without making mistakes. But if it's any relief, we all make them.
Yeah,
it's part of the human experience daily, all the time. And if you don't think you make mistakes, then you might be making the biggest of them all, which is called pride. But we learn. I think now we do have free will and we do have choice. And so I've heard it said that there's two ways of learning lessons, either by experiencing the pain yourself or learning from those who experienced that pain before. So, for example, for me specifically, drugs is not a battle that I ever went into. It's just I've had my own, but it was never one that I entered because I never tried them. And I saw enough around me, and I had enough wise advice from people around me that modeled what it looks like for you not to do that, and also the warning stories around me. And I know myself. It's like the life that's not analyzed is not worth living, right? And so it's like, know thyself. So I know that I have a lot of weaknesses and I'm a very passionate individual. So everything that I do it with passion. That includes the good things and the bad things. So I said, man, like if I ever go down this track, like I was just afraid of my own weakness to be able to overcome that. And I said, this is not a battle I need to fight.
I call it extremism. If you're successful in life, you're an extremist, right?
You're an extremist.
It's important to direct that extremism in the right ways.
That's it. And so for me, I do think that you need to learn, but you don't need to experience every single bad thing. You know, I don't need to be bitten by like a giant cobra to understand that that's not going to feel good.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And that's where, but there's other people that do. And they love it, and they want to play with the cobra, and they get bit, and they survive, and they have a great story to tell, and then maybe their bodies have more antibodies, and they become cobra handlers. So everybody's on their own journey, but I think we need to have enough wisdom to pause and think, where is this path going to take me, and what is the final conclusion of this? I think also, you speak about the parties and these things, and I've been in them as well. And sometimes, I would see these individuals, and it's just, there's a thing called discernment where your heart is telling you something. It's telling you, like, don't go to that place or don't associate with this specific individual. Sometimes, you think of, I'm getting to scuba diving a lot, and, you go into the reef and there's all these beautiful little fish, but every once in a while, there's like, what do you call those things that the snakes underneath the water? The things that, eels. Yes. Okay. Yes. If you've ever seen an eel.
Armin, by the way.
Yes.
Well done.
The voice. Who is that? No. But I like to scuba dive. And if you go to these ecosystems, there's all these beautiful fish, beautiful coral. You're really enjoying it. And every once in a while, you'll see an eel. And it's so off-putting because they're so ugly, they're dangerous, and they're there. And I think in life, sometimes we have to understand that there are eels everywhere we go. I see the fish, I see the beauty, but you can also have enough discernment to listen to that inner voice to understand, like, hey, is this an eel? And taking time to think and process and give it space.
I still think, like, you still had to go through a period of your life to find out that you needed spirituality and you needed more purpose, right? My advice to people is, like, don't punish yourself for the mistakes you will 100% make. If you can just fuck up quicker, like, the sooner you can mess up, the sooner you can learn. I think that's when you go on a path of fulfillment. So, like, don't hit yourself if you're listening here and you've not had the greatest couple of years, you've wasted a bit of your potential. Like, you've now learned, like, use the rest of your life to go and achieve it. I am so brutal about who I spend time with, which is why I'm so glad I've met you, because you're like a person I would 100%, and we have had just nice dinners. We just speak about life. And, like, you're someone I want to surround myself with. That, like, environment of people, I think, is who you become, and you're the exact type of person. So let's dig into Global Child TV a little bit more. So talk us through how you craft a trip, how you decide what you're going to show, how you decide who you're going to bring it with. And then something I think, Armin, who edits and does all the production here for us, how you look at post-production. Is there, like, when you shoot something, like, it just didn't really fit, it didn't work, do you go back to that area and shoot it again, or do you just call it that was a dud and we move on? So talk us through a Global Child TV project.
Sure. So typically I get signs as to where to go. Sometimes there's specific places I want to go, but I'll give you a specific case in point. I was going to be part of this panel for the Travel Award, the Travel Video Awards. And when I was there, I met this gentleman, and he talked to me about Belize. And he runs the Coppola Hotel. So at Francis Ford Coppola, his family, they have some beautiful hotels. He saw Global Child, and he said to me, listen, you should come to film in Belize. Now, it had not crossed my mind, but I'm like, like, maybe this is a sign. 2 days later, Miss Earth, who also happened to be from Belize, writes me randomly on Instagram, hey, Global Child, I'm from Belize. I would love for you to come visit my country. So I get another one. Sometimes, I don't need to get the letters in the sky. I understood that this was something to do. Now, what did I do? I said, okay, usually the people who pay us are the tourism board or the hotel clients. So I said to her, listen, you're from Belize, you're a local celebrity, now global as well. I said, do you know someone from the tourism board? She says, yes, I do. I work with them all the time. I said, here's the deal. Introduce me. And if we get a sponsorship, you come on as a producer, you get a percentage. You also get to host a show, and we can go film your country. That's exactly what happened. So I think that's also experience. There's usually people that help you to broker the deals. They're, relational. But sometimes I will target specific destinations that I want to go to. And you'll like this part. The hotel partners are super key. When Global Child was growing, what really took the show from this to this were the 5-star hotel partners. Because once we got distribution on, it was like 12 major airlines that carry 600 million passengers. I remember thinking, well, this has to be worth something. I'm on all these screens with travelers that have purchasing power and they're already on the plane and they're already going. Like there's no more specific audience. And a friend of mine was getting married in Greece. So I said, I can't really afford right now like a 5-star hotel, but I should get something in trade if I do this. So I remember Googling top 5 hotels in Greece and the list came up and I wrote the 5 and the response was immediate, like, we'll give you this, we'll give you a sailboat for 60 people for the Greek islands, we'll give you the honeymoon suite, we'll give you I was like, wow, like these people have a lot to offer. So it was in that Greece episode when we stayed at these hotels, I started to realize that the top hotels also have top experiences.
Yeah.
When you have budgets to pay to stay at a place, you also want to go do extravagant things. And so that's part of my production stage. Let's say we identify a place, then I always reach out to the top, not me, well, my marketing director, top 5 hotels in the place. And every time it's the same response. Number 5 doesn't answer. Number 4 doesn't answer. Number 3 answers, but they don't know and they ask you all these questions. Number 2 thinks about it and says no. And number 1 says yes, always. It's extraordinary. This has happened in more than 20 destinations. Wow. That's why we've worked with the Four Seasons Corporate, Mandarin Oriental Corporate, Adantera, Taj Hotels and Maldives. Like it's always the best one in that region. And then I bring them in as production partners because I ask them, hey, what experiences do you guys offer? Oh, we have this sunset sailboat. We have the hot air balloon. We have the helicopter to the top of the mountain. We have the safari, blah, blah, blah. And that becomes part of the experience. So then finally, I just look at the place. I find the tourism highlight, the experiences. And with all these elements, we craft a story that I think we're going to tell. But then once we go, a lot of things just happen organically. And you have to be willing to go with the organic experience. Just a quick example, we were in Poland and we were driving these super cool cars with Miss World across the mountains. And I had wanted to milk a sheep. I thought it'd be really funny. This was very specific. And we were in the middle of the mountains and then these shepherds came with like a flock of 100 sheep while we were between activity A and B. And so I said to the team, I'm like, hey, let's go talk to them. And we spoke with them off camera quickly. And said, yeah, you can watch us milking a sheep and you can join in. And it became one of the most like iconic segments. Wow. But it's just like playing with what you're given.
I love that. It is really, really cool. I think one of the things there I noticed, one on the hotel side, to be successful in business, it's take risks. And you can see number 1 took, not saying you were a risk, but reach out and say, yes,
we were out of their comfort zone. We were new.
For sure. And the second thing is what people, I don't think, realize, and it's without doubt, in my opinion, number 1 is the network, right? Like networking, like truly networking. And I think your way of just reaching out to people, that's just networking. Like I often say to people, they want to watch a video on YouTube about how to build a business. They want to read a book about how to build a business. They want to watch a documentary on someone who's built a business. But my advice is, what's your industry? Go onto LinkedIn, find out a list of 50 to 100 people who are in that industry that you could sell to, and go reach out to them and send messages. No one wants to do that, right? Because it's your grunt work. But I think what you've done is you've looked at the audience that you want to work with. You've said, what value can I bring them? And you talk about value as one of your pillars. And you've reached out and clearly everyone in those 20 destinations who was the top resort. So value in the content you could bring. So I think you've like, your stories are reinforcing your pillars there.
And then I also think life, it's again, the word purpose. It happens for a purpose. Example. So 3 days ago, I went on a hot air balloon ride with a hot air balloon captain named Andrew that I met when we were filming with Dubai Tourism. He just happened to be the pilot that was chosen to be on the show because he's very charismatic and cool. And I really enjoyed getting to know about, hot air balloons, and I don't know anything about this world. And then I kept in touch with him and we went to have a coffee, and he's been telling me about how he went to more than 80 countries and takes underprivileged children on these hot air balloon rides for free as a way of giving back purpose through his own skill set. And I was thinking, like, how cool is it that I have a hot air balloon pilot friend and I have doctor friends and I have lawyer friends. And I think also sometimes the people you meet on your path, in a way, we are all living in a movie. Each one of our stories, everybody has a story. And I think it's really nice to keep in touch with the people that were part of your journey, because otherwise we're just using people. And you can't physically keep in touch with everybody that crosses your path. But like sometimes being intentional on, hey, I want to know more. I want to have more curiosity about, what's your life like and how can I help? And it's been often in the wanting to help people that new opportunities open up.
And with those stories, you talked about Andrew there, and let's say you're on set now, you're in Belize or you're in Dubai. Is it literally the 16 hours a day that you're traveling that the team are recording you? And then you have to like post-produce what was the great bit? Is it like a reality show to some extent, 24/7 production?
No, it's not 24/7, but it is like once we are in a specific activity, we're filming all of it, right? And so let's say, example, we're filming the hot air balloon ride. Well, we're not filming the ride to the hot air balloon, but once we get out, cameras get rolling, and as they are starting to fill the tanks and the balloons, and people are having breakfast, and it's cold, and we begin to try to capture the experience as much as possible. And some of that experience is glamorous, some of it is unglamorous. And I think, once I get all those tidbits, I always say that television production is very much like cooking. The actual things that you film are your ingredients. So if you speak with any chef, if you have really bad ingredients, there's not much you can do. You know what I mean? Like you can, and if you have terrible ingredients, for sure, it's not going to taste good. So my job is first to capture as much as I can of the best ingredients. And then it's the cooking part. Like, what do I want to say? And with this amount of time, how can I entertain and inspire in the best possible way? And that's what makes the show.
And I have seen some of the shows, and I see all those angles. One thing I would say is you're still, to some extent, in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, creating an aspirational experience.
Yes.
Right. So you're playing on a psychological cue of a human who wants to
go do this.
Go do that. Right.
Do this. Yeah.
So how does like the blend in your mind play between not being too like aspirational? I'm not going to use the word pretentious, but aspirational at an elite level versus like purpose, which someone can see and feel and touch and potentially go on that trip. Like it must be a blend you have to be aware of, right?
Yes, it's a very fine line. So I think that self-deprecating humor is very, very key. And there's a lot of entertainers that I see, and they're very popular, but I like the people that are willing to laugh at themselves. And I think some of the experiences that we do, they're already so fantastic and so beautiful. And we are joined by usually very beautiful co-hosts, right? Miss World, Miss Universe, Miss this, Miss that. Forbes instructors that are also, let's say, like, very successful as entrepreneurs. So the people that come there are usually very high profile and successful. So I never want to be that show where, as you say, it becomes pretentious. Now, I think the way we toe that line creatively is I'm constantly making fun of myself. I'm falling, I'm slipping, I'm uncool. Like I allow myself to be that person because a part of me is that person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we were doing some underwater aquatic stuff in Tenerife with one of the top free divers in the world. She's obviously super stunning, super beautiful. So we jump into the ocean. She's with this other expert camera guy. They go down and, she's twirling with like, thousands of fishes. And here I am, I'm trying to be part of the show. So I want to get on the shot. And I'm trying to go down and I'm kicking and I just really can't go more than 1 or 2 meters. I'm like, what in the world is wrong? And I have a fin, and then I see my fin like flat going down into the water. I didn't put on a weight belt. And so if you don't put on a weight belt, like you just stay at the top. Just dumb things like that I do. And you'll see that on camera. You see me like wiggling and doing all these things. And and I keep those bits because it's the part that humanizes you. And then I also think the giving back. Okay. It's like when you give back, when they see you hanging out with lepers in a leper colony and looking at them eye to eye, or in a hospital, or with children, and that sincere human connection of connecting with someone in the eyes, then it's okay because they understand that they're not mutually exclusive. You can have the most incredible experiences on the planet, but as long as you give back, you have purpose and you're human. You're I think authentic.
Yeah.
I think that's the word.
Okay.
Authenticity keeps away the pretentiousness.
And I think you have the benefit of long form content. Right, you put up a photo in a nice place and you look nice, you're perceived in that one image and people come up with presumptions around who you might be. Whereas long form content, you see Miss World, you see yourself at the start, the first 2-3 minutes, be like, whatever insecurity you might have, and you're judging. You're like, oh, Miss World is presenting. What a joke. Blah blah blah. She's just beautiful physically. But then 20 minutes into it, she slips. The sea hits a wave, hits her in the face. She's with little kids. She's working with animals. You're like, wow, she's just a great human.
Yeah.
You've got long form content to play with, right?
And these people also have stories. Yeah. So specifically with Miss World, I discovered that Carolina had a really bad like facial allergy that literally like deformed her face, and she put on like almost like 25 pounds when she was Miss Poland prior to becoming Miss World. And this was the place when we filmed, she was coming out of that, and she was just speaking about it. So I think she says during the show that she discovered then that, you know, we really are beautiful as a soul inside, because she said that she changed completely different. She looked different when she looked in the mirror, but she felt the same. She had the same mind, same emotions, same everything. She just looked completely different. And she learned to value those experiences. So I think as a creator also, you'd be surprised, or maybe you won't, but I think we all have to go through these things. You know, even the people that do seem to have it together and do seem to be successful, everybody has a story, right? So we've all struggled in some capacity. And so allowing the co-host and the people that we bring on the journey to share those vulnerabilities. Right. It begins with me sharing my own, but then they feel okay sharing theirs.
Of course.
And I think both of these things combined, I'm always very mindful as well to introduce them to the audience. Like, who is this human? Not the title, not the success, like who is this person?
For sure.
And so even in those few minutes where they get to share some of their soul, then people are like, okay, I can cheer for you. I can join you on this journey.
You've nailed it there. And it's kind of, not that it's like, I hate saying this because it feels like a strategy when you're in sales. But for me, it's like the psychology of building a relationship. It's very simple in my opinion. It's one, be vulnerable for yourself. You say be self-deprecating. To some extent, it's that, right? Not in a way where you're trying to get people to feel sorry for yourself, but like humanize yourself by being vulnerable, and then be curious.
Yes.
About the other person. And it's just straight away you build a connection.
Yeah. And again, it's my style.
Yeah.
Like, you know what, when I made a TV show, I wanted to set out and tell a story in a way that reflects who I am, aligning with what I believe to be my specific purpose. As we began to film the show, you know, you always have so many options on what do you say. Do I talk about, you know, this tragedy? Do I bring politics into it? Do I do this? Do I do that? And it's rough at the beginning to understand who you are. I think companies have to understand who they are. So do entrepreneurs and entertainers. And then I realized after a few experiences, specifically with Greece, Greece was going through a very difficult time where they wanted to kick them out of the EU. And all you heard in the news was just like really bad news about Greek people. And then I went to Greece for the first time. And I fell in love with the country, with the people. And I said, these people invented philosophy, democracy, like your modern Western thinking, sculpture. The place is gorgeous. The people are attractive. They're like hospitable. They were great warriors. And I was looking at this thing and I was seeing the narrative and the media versus who they are. And when I made the show thinking to show them the best of who they are to the world, Greek people would see it and they would cry. And they would say, this is who we are. Wow. And I realized, I said, my job is a mirror to show to humanity the best of each other. Because imagine we went around the world with our biggest deficiency and our biggest mistake on top of our heads. Augusto's selfish. He's selfish. And I go, okay, yes, maybe that's a little part of me that I'm working on, but I have other qualities, right? Yeah. We all have defects, we all have qualities. But I think from a national perspective, Global Child, our job is to show the best of every single place to each other. It's not ignoring all the bad things, but there's plenty of coverage on that already.
Yeah. I love that. Let's finish off with a couple of like quick fire questions. They'll be kind of like bite sized just because we can kind of put them into little clips. So firstly, how many countries, destinations have you visited in the world?
31
roughly?
Countries so far.
Okay. And then within that, probably double, treble with the destinations and cities?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, at least 60 to 70, I think.
Okay, so for someone who's visited 70 plus locations around the world, hard question, but someone listening in, what's the number one place in the world?
Number one place in the world for what?
For experience.
For experience? Wow. I mean, again, so broad.
You have to pick one.
You have to pick one? Okay. I will just qualify that by saying that every country is beautiful and they're all unique, just like people. But if I had to choose a favorite one that I return to, Greece.
Okay.
I really keep going
The
back
Greek
to Greece.
islands or Greece?
I would say Greece as a
Okay.
whole, because I also think there's destinations that offer you a plethora of possibilities within the same place.
Okay.
And I think that's something to also take into account.
Okay.
The experiences that you can have in Santorini are very different from Mykonos, and they were very different to like the island of Chios, to Athens. So
Yeah, okay.
I love Greece. I think for tourists as well, it's a place where you feel very welcome and very safe, and the language barrier isn't that drastic. I think also many places, it just depends on your own personality type,
Okay.
right? Because what would benefit me or the thing that I'm drawn to is obviously going to be very different from someone with a completely different upbringing.
Amazing. If you were speaking to an audience here of 20-something-year-olds and you were to put 3 locations on your bucket list that would change your perspective on life, where would you go? And I would like to help with the question, I would discount, say, the tourist areas. So I don't want to be disrespectful, but like, you know, London, Paris, New York, Miami, right? I would
the major
consider them-
global capitals.
Yeah. So 3 bucket list locations, and I'll help out with mine. Japan, Iceland, and Africa.
And why Iceland?
I want to go to an area where I can see the Northern Lights at some point. You can see them in Iceland, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
You can cut that bit out.
We're like, we don't know.
But the scenery, just like the bitter cold, the like you're as close to nature as you possibly can in its rawest form. And actually, Ernest Shackleton is the inspiration for my company's name, Shackle, who explored the Antarctic. And you know, it's kind of to some extent that cold, bare region, right? Especially with like the daylight hours. I just think Iceland is somewhere I think boom would be amazing. Japan, because I'm in the service industry, the hospitality industry. The Japanese people are supposed to have some of the best service in the world.
Yeah.
And Africa, because it's where we all started, I suppose. And
Yes. Yeah, so for sure, an African destination, I would say Tanzania.
Okay.
Is great, and Tanzania offers you.
So I'll refrain the question again, just for the purpose of the reel. So if you were sitting in front of a group of 20-something-year-olds in a lecture room, and you were to say, put these 3 locations on your bucket list to change your perspective on life, what would they be?
I would say Tanzania, India, and I would agree with you that Japan. And one-liners for each one. I would say, you know, Tanzania shows you nature's original design, and you see just such beauty that God created, and a system where everything works, and you see the original intent. You don't see cables, you see space, you see nature, and it's just very, very beautiful. And you see humans that are mostly very, very joyful with little. So that one taught me, you know, just gratitude and appreciation. For Japan, obviously, it's a contrast, and you see a place that's very ancient, but very modern, and a culture and look and feel that's completely different to wherever you grew up with, unless you were in Asia. So I think it's important to also understand the way people live out of your own frame of mind. And lastly, I think India, because the contrast of that extreme poverty, that extreme luxury, and how we all fall somewhere in the middle, just should allow us to empathize with people better.
Okay, love it. And I will definitely put all of those on the list.
Yeah.
How do you get Miss World to join your brand?
Yes. Well, first, when I met her, she was Miss Poland. So I think casting is very important. I believe in talent. And a lot of times we get submissions from different people. And, you know, this is a great qualifier. So there'll be people that say they want to be on the show. And we'll do a casting. People can submit their videos, or people will reach out to us. So however it happens, we always ask for them to put together a video. And these are people that really want to be on the show. You would not be surprised to learn that about 80% of those people don't send a 2-minute video. All I'm asking them is very casually, I'm not asking you for a proper thing like this. I'm saying from your phone, super casual, just tell me why you love travel and purpose, where you want to go, some experiences, and who are you as a human. You know, just 2 to 3 minutes, just quickly. And the reason I ask for that is because 80% of the people are unwilling to even do that level of effort. So automatically, it's, you know, good riddance, right? So I know.
Yeah.
And then within that, some people have sent videos that really stand out. And when Carolina sent me her video, I've just rarely seen so much light beaming out, and personality and joy. And I said, this is someone that is special. And we were right. She ended up becoming Miss World. And also with Catriona Gray, you know, she has 28 million social media followers. She's one of the most famous Miss Universes. Same kind of deal. We did an outreach, and this specific manager managed a talent that was not her. But he said, by the way, I also manage Miss Universe. Would you like to have her on the show? Like, why, yes, we would. But it wasn't for another 2 years that we found the right opportunity to collaborate. So I think timing is everything. It's understanding who you want to work with, the stories you want to tell, and the right fit for everyone involved.
I love it. Finishing up, how do people find out more about yourself and then Global Child TV?
Of course. So, you know, you can obviously follow us on social media at Global Child TV or Augusto Valverde. You can find the show on all Emirates flights, NBC, Roku, Vizio. If you go and you have a smart TV, just put Global Child and we'll pop up somewhere. And of course, the website, globalchildtv.com.
I know you're very spiritual and a man of faith. Is
Yes.
there any like final words you'd want to leave people listening in?
Yes, I think the best piece of advice and what I want to share to everybody watching, first, thank you for watching. I would just say our opinions don't actually affect truth. And I don't want to get too deep, but sometimes, you know, we have opinions about life and faith and spirituality. Sometimes the people who speak about God the most are just such bad examples that they turn people off from God. Humans are flawed, no matter who it is, myself included, but God is awesome. And God loves every single person who is watching this. And God has a purpose and a plan for you. And so whether you believe or you don't, or you believe differently from me, I challenge you to go for a walk, put some music on, and try to speak to God. Ask him if you're aligned and in your purpose and what his purpose is for your life. And let's see if he responds. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Brother, pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
That was it, man.
It was
Thank
great.
you.
It was great.